So I'm getting started pulling the transmission out of this Escape here. This Escape just had work done, just had the transmission rebuilt 10,000 miles ago, last year. And all I've done so far is pull the cowl off and the battery box and air box out. And I've just found so much workmanship issues, so many. Well, first thing, the wiper cap nuts were, the covers for the nuts for the wiper arms are both missing. I believe the wipers were misaligned, and they also were in the wrong position too, I believe. So once the cowl was out of the way, I noticed that the air inlet hose here, which screws on right here, was completely loose. The clamp is missing for this hose here before it goes onto the inlet tube. The air box itself is broken right there. It was flopping around, and the grommet was missing. The engine mount bracket was missing a nut. The transmission cooler, I have not taken anything loose yet. This is how it was. It's missing a nut over there, or a bolt over there, and this retaining bolt right here is loose. The transmission cooler line bracket's not even attached to it. It's the transmission cooler lines are just flopping around. The battery tray was missing a bolt. That was just held in with 2 bolts. Once I got that out, then I noticed this wiring harness is smashed up underneath the engine mount. See? And if you're wondering, they're here because the transmission failed again after it was rebuilt 10,000 miles ago. I wonder what I'll find in there. You want me to keep you along for the ride? Started explaining it to him, and he just walked off like I didn't exist. I mean, he talks to me about stuff like that all the time. And so I just noticed here that the where this cooler is loose, that they had zip tied this hose to this harness here in the hopes that it would hold it still. Alright, so snip, get that out of there. Put it together correctly. The vent for the PTU should not be right there. It's in the wrong spot, but that's really not a big deal. I'll save the big stuff. Once again, the transmission cooler lines are loose. This time in the front of the transmission, right there. Nuts backed off. Wiring harness is missing from right here. See where it's supposed to be looped around? Alright, it looks like it's sunk down there at the bottom. Alright, you guys aren't going to be able to see this, but the center upper bell housing bolt is missing. It's missing a bell housing bolt. Quench your thirst. I will say, when all these bolts and stuff are missing, it makes my job easier pulling it apart. Lug nut stud stripped out. They had this isn't a big deal, but they had a stud where a bolt should be, like a stud they found in their scrap pile or something. But here, they were missing a bolt on this fender liner, and it rubbed the tire and damaged it. See, there should not be a hole here. This should be solid. Oh my goodness, I keep finding more stuff. This trim piece right here for the wheel liner, it's missing screws right here. Let me see, missing a screw right there, right there. That's it for there, except it's also missing a retainer right there. And this retainer is on the inside where it should be on the outside like that. And it's missing every single fastener on the bottom here, see? Every single fastener is missing. Who the heck works on... It's missing a bolt for the crash bar. Come on, guys. Who worked on it? This is pathetic. Lower service panel was only held on with like 3 screws, no joke. This panel was left loose here and rubbed the road and got damaged. That axle strap is not 10,000 miles old. That was reused. Look at all that pitting and corrosion on it. That's a one-time use strap because it kind of stretches and forms to the bearing here. That was not replaced. Surprisingly, all the PTU mounting bolts are in there, except, oh my goodness, I see more. The heat shield is missing from the top of the PTU, and I just noticed the catalytic converter mounting bracket here is missing. These shields on both sides of the car, which need to be removed to get this bracket off, it's missing retainers on each side right here. And that'll flop around and make a bunch of noise on the highway. Cut those down, and there's a bolt missing for the support bracket here. The upper PTU mounting bolt was loose. It wasn't even flush up against the block there. Got the PTU out, and this upper bell housing bolt is loose. See? They had a PTU mounting bolt being used as a bell housing bolt. Food! Alright, back from eating. So the upper starter bolt was loose. And then I noticed when I was pulling the bracket off for the auxiliary pump, this thing right here, that there was no auxiliary pump on it. So I took a close look there, and this is the auxiliary pump. It's just flopping around here. It's not mounted to anything like it should be. So they took that mount off and lost it or threw it away. So, I mean, this is just getting ridiculous. Well, it has been ridiculous. The engine oil filter was loose, so I had to get that off to get this housing out of here, but the oil filter being loose may not be their fault. It may have had an oil change after that. The starter insulator is missing, so they might have lost that or thrown it away. It's a little piece of rubber that insulates the starter from the heat inside of the transmission, or it just kind of pops in there in the bell housing before you slide the starter in. Quenching my thirst, round 2. Alright, so the torque converter nuts were actually all there. And they were the proper locking nut for the torque converter. My only complaint is they were so tight. The first one I broke loose by hand. I heard a squishy poppy type sound in my elbow. There's the network wiring that was smashed under the transmission mount. Look at that, they're flat. And yeah, once again, that is network wiring. That I've seen that cause a no start when people do that on Focuses. I'm sure the same thing applies to escapes. Alright, so long story short, I've got the transmission tore down. I made a video for that if you want to watch it. And what I found was they left valve body bolts loose, which lost line pressure to certain clutches, and well, I'll tell you what clutches. The overdrive is burnt, the direct clutch is burnt, and there's a little bit of burn marks on the intermediate clutch as well. So, and the one-way clutch has a burn mark on it too from that. So, yep, workmanship. They left bolts loose. Thanks for watching.